Hello, Jakob, Vigo, Alex. Good to see you guys.
Hey.
Hello, hello.
Welcome.
Good to see you.
Thanks for taking time out from your, I don't know, it's definitely a really sunny Friday afternoon here, weekend. So nice to see you guys. Good. Guys, we're going to dive straight in, I think. So I'm going to spotlight. I think that should work properly. And I think probably good if you guys mute your microphones for the presentation here so that we can, just have that there. And then there'll be plenty of time for questions. If you have any questions you want to ask and during the presentation, then you can put them in the chat and then we'll get to them. You're very welcome to do that. If there's something really important, feel free. If you feel that you have to grab the moment, then feel free to speak up as well. We're not that big that you can't do that as well. Good. Okay. So we're going to be talking about the 3 realms of men's work. And it sounds a little bit abstract and metaphysical, and I guess it is that, but it has a very practical consequences of what we're trying to do. And there's a very real problem that we're trying to solve here. So I'm going to talk very quickly about that before we start diving into what exactly the details are. Because what I've experienced in the last 8 years, I might be getting on to 9 years now, actually, of my life working in this field of men's work, is that there's a sudden new need for men to come together and to do work together on improving themselves and trying to respond to some of the chaos and difficulty and confusion in our society about what it means to be a man. And so there's been this sudden, I would call it actually explosion. 8-9 years ago, almost no one knew what men's work was. And all of a sudden, there's like hundreds or probably even thousands of men's works, professionals, facilitators, retreat organizers, group leaders, all kinds of different offerings and programs that you can sign up for and use a lot of money on to become a better man. And as I've been working in this field and also facilitating the European Men's Gathering for several years now, and being a part of a conversation between different men's work facilitators, I've seen that it's one big, very chaotic mess with a whole lot of different stuff all mixed together in one kind of basket. So there's definitely a lot of what one would call self-help work in there. There's also a lot of people who talk a lot about philosophy and different kind of metaphysical concepts and ideas. And then lastly, there's actually an awful lot of spirituality, religion, new age practices, all kinds of, weird and wonderful ideas that very much mix into what could often, in the worst cases, becomes very cult-like sometimes, with a very charismatic leader who takes a group of people into some very kind of, alternative practices and sometimes ends with some pain and confusion and difficulty or conflicts. So what we're trying to do here is to create clarity about like what is what and how can we differentiate between these two things. And so these ideas originally came out from the European Men's Leadership Summit held here in Denmark in 2022. And then we presented it as a framework and a blueprint for working with men's work at the second summit, which we held in Berlin earlier this year. And then again, presented to the whole of Mansign, which is Europe's biggest men's work conference. And it was very well received there and appreciated. So that's what we're going to try put out here. I'm going to briefly introduce the 3 realms, what they are and how they work. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what the consequences are. And I think that's where the most interesting thing is going to be. What's the consequences of these 3 different approaches to men's work or realms of men's work? So very simply, the 3 realms of men's work is an attempt to formulate a very simple system for having respectful and constructive conversations between men's work facilitators, but also to help people who are wanting to engage in men's work to be able to navigate and choose something that's useful for them. And if I have to put it the most simple as possible, then realm 1 is the actual men's work where you're doing self-help work. That's where we think men's work ideally is best situated. It's men who are helping each other, supporting each other, working on becoming a better man. Realm 2 is the philosophical or different kinds of conversations between different ways of doing men's work. because we see for as many men's work facilitators there's also different approaches, different foundational assumptions, different understandings of how the world works. And so the conversation between those different paradigms, different understandings, that's realm 2, which is important to have sometimes, but it's important that it's not just realm 2, of course. And then realm 3, that's the area of religion. And some people would say spirituality as well. So that's where we're engaging in actual religious spiritual practices, which we actually, part of my approach here is going to be saying like this needs to be separated out of commercial men's work, actually, and leaving religion to religions, to the mainstream traditional religions, and not trying to do that within men's work. It's difficult to do, because deep spiritual questions obviously come up with men when we work with ourselves and when we come together and talk about the important things of life. It's something that's beautiful about men, is that we do have these important conversations, but especially leaders of men's work should be staying away from taking on a kind of priestly shaman role if they want to be staying within their integrity in men's work, and leaving that up to religious practices that are explicitly religious. That's at least my proposal, and that's what I'm interested in discussing. Where's the boundaries between those things? When does it become a personal cult based on your own personality? When is it that you're helping men to find their own approach and their own way through deep questions in life? Good. So I have a little table that I'm going to share with you guys. I'm going to put it up on the screen here, and we can take a look at that and work through it as well, which I think should help us to get a greater understanding. So here we go. You should be able to see a Google Doc now with the 3 realms of men's work, metaphysical perspective. Yes. So I've just spoken about this first portion here. So I'm going to go diving into this table coming next. So as we said already, about realm 1 is work within a specific worldview. You have a specific understanding of what it means to be a man, what it means to be a human being, what the universe is, what the cosmos is, why are we all here? And so having clarity about that, and normally it's based on a single person's, the leader's understanding of that, then you decide, well, what do we need to do to become better human beings? So if you believe that reality is just an illusion or a computer simulation, or you believe that it's all just samsara and the wheel of samsara, or whatever it is you believe about reality, that's going to change how you're going to be working to become a better man. So within that, a specific worldview under the leadership of one person, you're working within a specific worldview. That's realm 1. Realm 2, again, is discussion between different worldviews. So different people have different approaches, different understandings about reality. What is human nature like? That's what we have on realm 2. We have discussions between them. It's important to have that. I'm going to increase the zoom here a little bit, so in case your screen isn't as big as mine, you can follow along. Yeah. And then realm 3, again, as I said, it's the area of religion. This is, when I say religion, this is the area of direct religious experience of a meeting with the divine. These are the kinds of experiences that actually shape and determine your cosmology and your anthropology. Cosmology is what are the cosmos. Anthropology is what is human beings, right? What is man? So the practices that you're doing within in a religious framework are actually going to shape and form how it is that you see the world, and how and what is the nature of things. So again, the main focus of each area, we have self-help in realm 1, realm 2 is philosophy, and realm 3 is religion. And this is not a perfect and clear distinction, and these things kind of bleed into each other as well. So obviously sometimes in realm 1 we're going to have philosophical conversations, and there's going to be things about religion coming into all of them. Rituals are everywhere in life, as we know, and obviously some religious work helps you to become a better person as well. So but this is just the main focus of each different realm. This is like what their foundational approaches to what you're doing. So in realm 1, then the thing that's required really is someone to give instruction, to teach, to mentor other people. It's someone who has experience of life that's been valuable, that they've been able to gain from, that they then are able to take other people through similar experiences so they can gain the same kind of experience and grow as a human being as well. In realm 2, you need to have people with differing perspectives. Everybody, no matter what, even if you are like saying like, oh, I'm just like a person who's in the process and I believe that there's no fixed reality, then that's your realm 1 understanding of reality. There's no such thing as a single human being who can live in realm 2. If you live in realm 2, then you go insane. That doesn't exist. So realm 2 only exists when there's the meeting of different perspectives that come together with each other. And this is an important thing to happen to help us to get a better understanding of our realm 1 understanding as well, as by meeting people who have different approaches to understanding the world. In realm 3, on the other hand, then what we actually need is faith. And so this is where, whatever, some people say, well, I don't have faith. I don't believe in faith. Like, no, everybody has faith in something. You need to have faith that when you stand up in the morning, you put your feet over the edge of the bed, that when you put them down, they're going to hit the ground. Because, if you look at, some scientific analysis will show that there's actually much more space down there than there's actually solid earth as well. So, faith is what allows us to move in the world. And we have to put our faith in something like that to be able to navigate and to be able to make decisions and to move forward. And especially in realm 3, the world of religion is based on putting your faith in something that you don't understand, in a mystery that's greater than yourself and bigger than yourself, that you trust in and let go of control yourself. So again, taking that further, then what you need to do in each realm, in the first realm, you just simply engage in a practice. It's like an experiment. You don't know for sure, you trust some guy, but you're also using your critical reasoning facilities. It's like you go into something, you try it out, and you see what it's like. And as you do it, you see like, oh, this helps me, this one doesn't help me, I do more of this, do more of that. So you engage in the practice that someone else recommended, and you're looking for that kind of results of becoming a better person. Realm 2, what's required is listening, critical thinking, and discussing. So we listen to other people's perspectives and how they see the world. We think about it critically, and then we put our perspectives forward. And hopefully that becomes a dialectical process where everybody becomes more intelligent. None of us have all the answers ourselves. So by especially engaging with people who are different from ourselves, who see the world in a different way, we can grow and learn to understand the world. And anybody who says, I have the final answers, I know exactly perfectly for myself the way things are, that person's probably quite dangerous in the long term if they really mean that. Yeah. Good. Realm 3, what you need to do, open to mystery. This is where you're being formed. Your standing point in the world is going to get shifted by doing this. And so you open up to the mystery of existence and to experience it in a kind of very raw, firsthand kind of way. So in realm 1, we are navigating through our own experiences, our own thinking processes, where we experience something and then we be able to decide which way to go. Realm 2, we're much more using our intuition and cognition, so heart, stomach, and head, to understand and to judge and to evaluate, and also to take in and synthesize ideas and things like that. And realm 3, it's much more just about letting go. It's about opening up to the experience and not being in control. And so that's what we do in a religious practice much more. So examples of this in realm 1, we have the No More Mr. Nice Guy framework. You read the book, there's a whole lot of exercises, you find a group of guys, you do the exercise together, you have the conversations based on the questions that are posed, and it gives a result. And many people have done it before. This is what we do in Maniphesto Core. We have the people, purpose, practice framework. You create a vision, you set some goals, and you work on your habits to make sure that you're moving in that process. This is the exact way that we move forward. It's realm 1 work. Realm 2, an example of that would be a pro-feminist discussing with a mythopoetic practitioner or something like that. Two very, very different ways of looking at the world, understanding there's truth in both of them. There's some important insights. And so what you're looking for when you have this discussion, of course, is what are the higher level truths that are uniting the perspectives from both of those different ways of seeing the world. And realm 3, I put in from my own Orthodox Christian tradition, celebrating the divine liturgy. This is again a stepping into eternity and consuming the flesh and the blood of God in a church service that we do on Sundays. So that's this kind of like opening up to mystery and experiencing something quite radical in different ways, and allowing myself to be formed by that experience. Good. Benefits and drawbacks. So with realm 1, what we're doing is we're doing actual work, and that means we're actually progressing, we're doing something. And that's very much as opposed to, maybe I can take it, the drawback then as well, is that of course this is limited by your realm 2 direction. So you can do a lot of work, but if you're not going in the right direction, sometimes you might end up after like a year or 2 years where I was like, oh, all the stuff I've been doing, I've actually been developing something that hasn't been very good for me, and it's actually been destructive for me as well. So that's where realm 2 comes in, is that we need to refine our direction. I think there's a good there's a good kind of analogy or story of like a group of guys that land in the middle of the jungle. And we have leaders and we have managers. And so the leader, that's the guy who climbs up the tree once in a while and looks out across the jungle and sees, okay, guys, that's where the ocean is. That's where the harbor is. That's the way we need to go. And then the manager, that's the guy who's kind of like making sure like, okay, the machetes are sharp and we're doing something about the snake bites and, organizing all the things as well to be able to actually do the work to cut through the jungle and get the group of people over there as well. So realm one is the realm of doing the practice, getting stuck in everyday kind of work, whereas realm two is about finding that direction, creating a vision for yourself. The drawback of realm two, of course, is that if you're just doing that, and there's unfortunately a lot of people are just doing this, then it can just be a lot of hot air and talk and no action. Good. And then realm three, this is the most dangerous area of all in some ways, of course, because you need to have faith in something like that. And so you risk being misled. You need to put your faith in something or someone, and you might choose the wrong person. All the people I've met so far, including myself, are very fallible and have all kinds of, bad sides to them that they're not even aware of themselves as well. But realm three is really like the source of life, of everything as well. And so this is we have to go there. We have to step out into experiencing transcendent experience. Otherwise, we become very dry and gray and lifeless. So this is the source of everything that comes from is these three from realm three. Good. So I think I'll pause there actually and maybe stop the share and just open up for you guys on the meeting. Does anybody have any questions or reflections that they would like to add at this point? And let me know if you want me to bring up the table as well. I'll stop the share here. Yes, Alex.
Thanks, Paul. I just wanted to ask to what degree are these three realms integrated? In terms of how we're working at the moment, Maniphesto Core sort of changed its course from sort of a conglomeration of these three realms to focusing very much on realm one. But I see as you go down your table right at the bottom when you're looking at the drawback of realm one, you speak about being limited by your round two direction, which sort of speaks to the fact that in round one, you're still engaged in round two and round three. So I was wondering to what degree do you see that integration within sort of your personal framework in terms of the person engaged in round one, and then as Maniphesto Core, how much and to what degree are these three realms integrated?
Yeah, it's difficult to say like, where do we delineate between the two different realms, because there's kind of like micro realm two and then there's macro realm two as well, right? Like obviously even in realm one we need to be constantly adjusting our vision. For example, if you make a vision for yourself, say this is where I want to be in 1 year from now, then with a guarantee 3 months down the line it's going to change. And so we do need to be shifting our direction. But if we're in a group of guys that has to have radically different approaches to life and radically different visions for what is the good of life or the good life, then it's going to be very difficult to actually, you're going to spend so much time and energy, disagreeing about absolutely fundamental things. And so what we found is that the more that we can actually, it's very much against the whole, diversity of strengths kind of thing. Actually, we're looking for a larger degree of homogeneity to have guys who are far more aligned in basic foundational assumptions about life, about what is good. So in the beginning, we're having conversations on Manifesto Core, is there even such a thing as a metaphysical up and down? And can one, equate goodness with up and downwards with evil or something? Or does evil exist or something like that? And what we found is these are realm two discussions that are just not productive with a group of guys who want to become better men. Then for guys who want to have these very postmodern, very kind of, far out abstract conversations, it's not productive. Or even what does it mean to be a man? And I don't know, am I a man? Or, are you guys all just a part of the evil, oppressive patriarchy and you're reifying, old fashioned gender stereotypes? We're just not interested in that conversation. We tried having it. We had it for years. We tried listening to these guys. And what we found is it just took a whole lot of energy and it went nowhere. It was just staying in realm two, hot air, hot air, hot air. So it comes through in some ways, one could say I could probably give you some pretty clear list of issues that need to be cut out. But it comes through experience of saying, like, these are the things we can discuss and we do talk about. And then some of the things, we've also made clear decisions about, like, we do believe that men should become more masculine. Becoming more masculine entails creating more structure in your life, having a clear sense of direction, being orientated to a vision, being accountable, doing the things you say, and being able to say the things that you're going to do. To a greater degree. You don't have to become perfect in that field, but we do help each other to grow in those areas. And there's plenty of guys who say, like, oh no, I want to be in the flow and I want to be not not trying to control things. I just want to be able to let go and enjoy life. It's like, great, but do that somewhere else. That's not for us. So these are the kinds of things that we found in our experience. Our realm 1 is based on, like, a specific set of masculine traits in men that we've now defined now in the 10 principles of Manifesto, which pretty clearly states these are the things that you should agree with if you want to work with us. Then it's probably going to work. If you disagree with these things, if you're a bit like unsure about 1 or 2 of them, that's okay. If you fundamentally disagree with several of them, then it's just not going to work.
Great, thanks, Paul. The other thing, just to follow up with that, is then when I think about how you create your vision, and that's a really important part of the process in the round 1 application of vision, goal, practice. Do you think when creating vision, you do start to sort of enter into that round 2 and round 3 space, and that your vision really is more intangible in the sense that it's lying well within your future, whereas the other aspects of the round 1 practice, like goals and the individual habits or practices, are very physical, very embodied. You do them, you go through them. Whereas vision does sort of seem to sort of be in that sort of round 2, round 3 area.
A good question. I'd like to hear your thoughts about it as well, Alex. My take is that a good vision is very much informed from realm 3 firsthand experience. That's a good vision. Most men, including myself, have a lot of our vision formed in realm 2. So we're just basically repeating stuff that we've heard other people say. And we look around us, a lot of us, we've worked a lot with this guy. What's the guy with that our desires are something we just copy from those around us, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the name escapes me right now.
Yeah. Mimetic, he did that mimetic.
Yeah, mimetic desire.
Yeah,
exactly. So mimetic desire. So I think a lot of our visions, when we draw our vision, it's really interesting what comes out. I've been doing this practice now of physically drawing a vision, and sometimes you get surprised, like, oh, suddenly I'm drawing this, and this thing's on there, and why on earth did I put that there? Right. And so this is where I think our visions are often just us regurgitating stuff we've picked up in the culture about what we think other people want. And so I believe that most of us actually have quite little access and have very little real realm 3 experience. And so a lot of it is maybe even delusional, the realm 3 experience we've had, and dangerously delusional as well. And so I believe that is the true source, the good source. But unfortunately, yes, a lot of us, and in my life, I can just look at how, I've been doing this work for a long time now, and it's just like peeling back layers of the onion. I say, like, this is what I want to do. And so the next 3 months, the next year or whatever, I work on it. I achieve something, I get there. And it was like, that's not what I wanted at all. There's no happiness here. There's no fulfillment here. And then I was like, well, what is it really? And then I go to the next layer and the next layer and the next layer. And so, as you continue to do that, is there, I don't know, maybe one needs to do that, but it seems to be necessary. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it certainly agrees with my view. And I certainly think that round 3 is where your vision sort of needs to spring from. And as you say, round 2 is where most guys get stuck. And I think it's because you're sort of caught up in these varying views of the world. And it sort of entrenches a certain kind of thinking in you. And as you say, you end up following someone else's philosophy or point of view or direction, and you're not really finding your own way in the world. And I think as you open yourself up to round 3, you're able to see the greater good for you, the greater path for you. And so that sort of creates the landing place for your vision.
Absolutely. And this is, again, why, going back to your first question, why it's so important to have standards in your realm one work, that you don't just say like, oh, we just take everybody, everybody's welcome, come and join us, we love everybody, we accept you just the way you are. You know, it's like, no, we don't accept everybody just the way they are. If I do that, I'm going to create a men's group with a bunch of guys who are seriously, you know, have all kinds of problems, and they don't even want to get challenged about them as well, right? And so it's like, no, I want to be surrounding myself in my men's group with guys who have, you know, values that I can look up to, and who have qualities that are, you know, they've mastered things, they have high integrity, they have a high level, you know, I want, because they're going to be forming, you know, we're like these, we are mimetic, you know, we're sponges, we absorb those people, and in a men's group, you're absorbing so much from those other people around you. So, you know, if you advertise or ask for just like whatever, then you're going to get a lot of confusion and fragmentation and disintegration. And so what you'll see is a lot of men's groups who just sit around and talk about their feelings, because it's the thing we can all agree about, because feelings are just in the moment and they come and go. And so we can have these deep emotional experiences by talking about our feelings with other men, and it feels like we're really opening up and getting to know each other, but it's not men's work at all. It's actually women's work. It's extremely feminized, and doesn't go anywhere. So that's why in Manifesto, we have this very, very specific focus on vision, goals, habits, concrete actions, accountability. That's what all of our focus is on, really, is accountability. I know plenty of men's groups, you know, there's groups that say like, oh, we're all just about like getting rid of shame. We have to get rid of shame. It's like, well, you know, I've done some really, really terrible, ugly things in my life, and I think I should be shameful about those things. If I just want to get rid of all the shame, then it's like, you know, then what's going to stop me from just doing that kind of stuff again? So, you know, but there's men's, you know, if you don't like being shameful about bad stuff you've done, then, you know, maybe then go join one of those groups, of course, right? Sorry, maybe I'm getting a bit too controversial here, but yeah. Anything else from you other guys here?
Well, I was thinking about that if you formulate a vision outside of the realm 3 and actually move towards it with taking action, then you will discover how empty it was. And you will have to go deeper, at least closer to the realm 3, which happened for me. I formulated my vision to get a girlfriend. And then it turned into just have sex. And then I had sex, and it was just the satisfaction lasted for maybe 3 minutes, and then there was just this deep emptiness of anxiety that was left, and I was so confused. It was like my whole reality shattered, and it kind of needed to do that for this openness into the realm 3 to open up. And so I really like how the realm 1 is formulated here. That it's not talking about just emotions and some philosophical, just being in the idea.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That's really useful and helpful. Yeah. What do you think helped you, Viggo, to find your way after that experience of reaching your goal? Because that's what everything in our society tells young men. Oh, what do you want? What do you want in life? You got to get laid. You're not a real man until you get laid, preferably by as many women as possible. And you want every weekend or, you know, 2 or 3 a weekend is the best. And then when you do that, you realize like, oh, it's actually empty. But what do you think helped you then move on after that? Like, what was the element?
Well, I found that so a tool I used to get more attraction from women was to not come or to discipline myself sexually. And so that really upped my, I think, spiritual life or sensitivity. And so I felt more drawn to something else through that. And I just was so compelled to, well, we moved into the next quarter after I had gotten laid and was just left in this empty bubble of disgustingness. We moved into the next quarter, and I thought, okay, my next personal practice is going to be prayer. And so that completely transformed my whole, I think, personality, my whole being in such a fast pace that it just started to grow my realm 3 experience and interactions with the world, I guess, and with my core group in such a natural way. And it was completely outside of my own doing, I think. The more I went to God, the more he just rearranged my whole life.
That's a powerful one. And maybe Viggo will get you on here to tell your story separately on the YouTube channel. That would be great. But I think we'll keep to the topic here as well. I'll just mention that it reminds me of a biblical story, actually, where the disciples meet this guy who has like a demon or sickness or something like that. And then they're like, try and drive this demon out, and they just can't get it to work. The kid's like having fits and going crazy and chewing his chains and stuff like that. And then they bring him to Christ, and they say like, well, hey, we can't help this guy. Like, what's up? We can't do anything with him. And so then Christ, I can't remember exactly what he does, but then he drives out this demon, and then he says this type cannot be dealt with without prayer and fasting. And so that's a principle, I think, which is in all of Christianity, but also in all religious traditions ever, is that to be able to attain spiritual growth, you need to prayer is the withdrawing of your attention from the world around you and the orientating it towards that which is, the highest possible place that you can imagine it, to the mystery that exists above you. And fasting is the denying of the satisfaction of your immediate need for, just pleasure or for attaining, whatever is your body needs right now. It's a denying of that. So it's an ascetic practice, and learning to not be just controlled by your impulses, but learning to be able to actually focus your attention at that same time towards something higher. That's the central aspect of, and this is religious practice again that's done. And that's why we don't in Maniphesto Core say everybody should pray and fast. We don't do that because that's something that a church can do. Unfortunately, it's 99.9% of churches in the world have stopped doing that, telling people you have to, especially fasting. It's been completely removed, but it's a central part of all religious traditions that are older. That it's, and obviously not in New Age traditions either, not all of them, but I think it's growing a lot. I'm seeing plenty of secular guys, and even like guys like Alex Huberman talking about fasting these days as well. So I think it's coming back in a big way. Good. Anything, Jakob, Richard? Otherwise, I think we're going to move on to the takeaways from the table. Go for it, Rich.
This might come across as a challenge, and if you decide that it's not appropriate here, then
please bring challenge. YouTube. This is going out on YouTube, and this is a Realm 2 space. This is the way we're looking at it.
Okay, I mean
we want some challenge. Cool. Yeah.
So I was worried that it would turn into a Realm 2 kind of vibe, but if that's appropriate, then okay. Yeah. All right. I mean, I just see that the major dissonance in like what different forms of Realm 1 work there are is kind of most of the problem, in that, like, how does a man find his version of men's work? And that seems to be what the problem is. And just a couple of facts to throw at you, and just to kind of challenge what you'd mentioned around men's work being feminized and not being for men. It's like, I just want to throw a different vision out there. Like 71% of, let me just reframe this. According to a recent survey of men between 18 and 35 in Germany, 71% believe they have to solve personal problems without asking for help. 51% believe they are weak and vulnerable when they show their feelings. 63% say that they sometimes feel sad, lonely, or isolated inside. 33% of men surveyed say they physically abuse women to make them respect them. Like, the emotional component that you say is feminized, I would argue, is utterly essential. And I think we need to actually just bring a lot of this stuff together and not get lost in sitting in circle and sharing emotion. But when you talk about it, it seems so disparaging sometimes that it's like, no, that's fucking important, because these young men and men my age and older are still really struggling to share like feelings. And half of the problem is that they seem to be alone in them. And that's what I believe has a lot to do with rates of suicide, depression, and loneliness. And so you get where I'm going with this. And I'm just wondering if there's a way to start to bring like both of these areas of men's work together, where it's like, yes, healthy masculinity is about structure, discipline, freedom, purpose, all of these things. And it has to encompass the kind of emotional literacy that we tend to fail to have as men? And do you see that actually as important?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Richard, for bringing in that perspective. I think there's need for different realm one approaches. And I also think that any men's group that doesn't have the emotional element in it at all is destined to, collapse and break down, and, hypocrisy, because we have hearts and we have feelings, and if we don't take care of them, then they get brittle and hard and they snap. And so absolutely, my approach, and which I believe is I've seen just so important for me, is I lead with the masculine, and I establish the relationship and the frame as the masculine frame. And then as I learn to trust men through that masculine way, those are the kinds of men that I feel I can open up to regarding my softer, more vulnerable sides. So for me, my soft, vulnerable sides are very private and personal. I have one guy who I call every single morning at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I have my buddy call with him. And everything that's bothering me and hurting me and troubling me in my heart, I share with him long before I share it with my wife. But I don't tell anybody else these things a lot of the time, because I resolve them with him, and I trust this guy, and I trust his foundation. I trust his way of looking at the world, right? And so that's why I sort these things out. If I lead with that stuff, if I put that stuff out in the front and say, oh, we all need to talk about our feelings and our issues and stuff like that, then I start doing that with all kinds of men who I don't know who they are, and I don't know, how they're going to respond. And so then I open myself up to being influenced by them. So I believe that men do need to be strong and directful and purposeful and have a clear direction. And so if I have nothing of that, then I get it. Then yeah, I need to lead with the vulnerability. I totally get that's where a lot of guys are these days, especially the statistics that you mentioned. It's a very scary and real picture. And so that's why I say we need different approaches, because those guys, if you're down there, then you're not going to be able to come in a group of guys and be strong. You'll be faking it, and you'll be actually creating a bit of a toxic atmosphere by doing that. But Manifesto, I've decided I want to start with the guys who do have that strength, because I think that we need to create more. We need to create great examples, and so we've had guys coming into Core who have really been very, very down in the gutter, and some of them have grown very, very fast, and some of them stay down in the gutter and they don't actually want to get out of there. And the ones who stay down there, they leave, because either they get exponentially fast growth, or you leave. So that's the culture that I want to set. There's a mainstream narrative in society today that in order to be okay, men need to become more like women, and I don't believe that. I don't believe that's true. I think men need to be even more like men to do that. But this is a realm 2, realm 1 discussion, and I think let there be many flowers. May 1,000 flowers blossom. And I see the need for very different levels. It comes from a little bit that I did an education as a therapist. I'm an educated psychotherapist, and what I saw there scared the hell out of me, and I just want to be away from it. I don't like that whole therapy industry at all. I think it's very, very bad for men, and so I want to stay away from trying to do therapy for guys, and instead just be creating a framework where guys can naturally grow.
Where would you point a man to in terms of what we might call, I like to call, like emotional strength training? Because you're kind of like saying, well, come when you've already got that. So there doesn't seem like,
or come in if you're willing to learn it quickly. Come to me if you're willing to learn it quickly and take some knocks. You're going to get some knocks if you don't have emotional strength. If you've been treated like a baby your whole life in a kindergarten, and you're used to being treated like that, and you come into Manifesto, you're going to get some knocks, and then you can grow very fast. If you can take those knocks, because we love the guys that come to us and we do our best to support them. We have our issues as well. Sometimes we're rude and unfair and, have our own projections and issues and stuff like that. But if you're able to play the game with us, then you'll grow. If you can't take that, then go to someone like Richard Ayling, who has a good website and offerings and offers coaching and stuff like that as well. I think that's a good place to go. Yeah. I can see Alex got his hand up. Let's hear what you have to say, Alex, before, and then, yeah.
Sorry, if I could just jump in on that question, Rich, about where do you go? And I think one of the sort of time-honored ways in which mental and then ultimately spiritual strength is developed is actually through physical discipline. And you see that particularly in the military, where physical training and hard pushing men to their physical limits helps them find their mental strength, and ultimately being in difficult situations develops a spiritual strength. So for me, and I think Jordan Peterson sort of picks on this and points this out a little bit when he sort of tells men, you know, start by making your bed. That's a physical discipline, a small thing, but it actually leads to ultimately a mental discipline and then spiritual discipline.
Yeah, and martial arts is the other one, of course, as well. But I like military because it has real world application. You know, martial arts is just a game. And that is always just, it's at the end of the day, I realize like it's a selfish game in some ways. It's all about me and my improvements and my betterment. And it's a great thing. I think it's better than gym. Gym is also great for guys who go to gym, I think, going to a fitness center. But I like the military because it actually, it's you're there to defend your nation, your country, as a man, and put your life on the line if you're called for it. And that's becoming a realistic scenario in Europe these days as well. So I think there's something about that. And you have to deal with the fact that you might not like your country as well. So that's also very interesting to be confronted with as well. Good.
I do, just final point, not that I have to have the final say, but like I do feel like we're on separate planets here. Like doubling down on like physicality and discipline, I think that does negate like a huge need to become, it doesn't help the emotional literacy of like learning to like actually work with emotions. It's kind of just putting them to one side and saying, well, men don't need to deal with that. I really think we're missing something. And based on the work that I've done, not to self-promote, but just to see the work that I've done and learned from other people, there are so many men that this isn't the angle for. And I think, again, if we're trying to create like a unique or unified vision, we need to talk about this kind of stuff more. And I really think we're missing something by, no disrespect, Alex, kind of doubling down on the physicality and the discipline side of things. Because someone like me, it's really helped. And this is key stuff, but there's other stuff that, yeah, we're not talking about enough. And it doesn't mean.
But like, Richard, I think you shouldn't see it as opposed to each other, but complementary. So I think, you know, like anybody who's done like a hard workout with a friend will find like the conversation in the locker room afterwards just flows so much easier. If you've been like in a boxing ring with someone and been sparring with them, then that's when you suddenly guys open up about things that they have had a hard time talking about. And so some guys, they can just sit down in a room in a circle and have those conversations as well, and that's fine. But for a lot of guys, then connecting at physical level first. There's something about fighting another man, like grappling with another man. There's a language that you understand and you see, and you meet a man in a far deeper way than you do just through the cognitive conversations that you have sitting face to face.
So you're saying that martial arts fighters and people that get involved with this are more emotionally literate than most men? Like, that doesn't land.
I'm saying that there's an opportunity when used intentionally in martial arts and other, in martial arts, to be able to connect with other people and create deep friendships, relationships that are very meaningful. And then if you add the emotional component to that, of connecting at an emotional level with those people, it creates a very meaningful connection with other people, that friendship that can bear you through life and create meaning in your life and help you to find good direction. Yeah, I'm not saying that all martial artists are the most emotionally intelligent people. Absolutely, of course, that's not the case.
Thanks for hearing my challenges and questions. I appreciate it.
No, and I appreciate you bringing it as well. Thanks. Good. So, guys, I think we've already started talking about the consequences of these different realms, and I think we'll talk a little bit into it. What I've done is I've divided it up into men who are entering men's work for the first time, men who are veterans of men's work, and then people who are men's work leaders or facilitators of men's work. So how to think about these different realms. And so I'm going to share my screen again. This document will be in the description for this video as well for those who are watching, and I'll share it. I'll obviously send it out to you guys so everybody can see it. So what we said is, if you're entering men's work for the first time, then attend a festival type event, a Realm 2 event, or an online event where you can meet different leaders of men's work. And you want to look for a realm 1 person, a realm 1 leader, I guess it is more than a practitioner, who you can trust and you can imagine being mentored by. And that can be difficult for a lot of guys coming to this field for the first time. So it helps if he has demonstrable results in helping men to achieve the kind of goals that you're interested in. You need to be aware that sometimes your goals will change. Often that's the first thing that guys happen when they come to men's work, is they realize that what they're interested in is maybe not the first thing. So that's why I say be open to realizing higher level goals than the ones you start with. Be skeptical and ask critical questions. Don't try and be a people pleaser. Don't try and be a nice guy. Don't try and like get into the good books of somebody, but focus on like on critical questions, and look for guys who are actually doing realm 1 work. There are a lot of very impressive talkers out there who are very charismatic, but if they're not actually doing realm 1 work, they don't actually have demonstratable, men attending workshops and going through retreats, and preferably like ongoing work. Normally, it's easy to give men an experience, which could be like, wow, what a powerful experience at some kind of retreat. But working for someone over years and really creating transformation in their life, that's the difficult thing. It's the very, very hard thing to do. So look for guys who've actually done that, been for years working with other people and really caused transformation in their life. Talk is cheap, and you can't learn from something from a man which is not mastered himself. And again, I would say men's work should be aimed at supporting men in developing their masculinity. Yes, to develop our masculinity, we also need to get in touch with our more emotional sides and all that kinds of things. I lead with the masculinity. I think that's the thing that the person should be putting out there, is a masculine face to be able to develop. And then if he does that well, it means that he has integrated his emotions and all these kinds of things. So stability, strength, courage, and mastery are things that you want to look for in a guy. So you want to find someone who you feel you can trust, you can learn from, and then you get clear, what goals do I want to achieve? You write them down, and then you fully engage in whatever he's offering, the program and the course and the, whatever it is that he's doing. And then after a time that you decide beforehand, you evaluate, how am I doing with these goals? Am I finding this to be valuable? Have I been growing as a human being? It shouldn't be forming your identity. So you need to be careful. Again, this is the cult-like thing. Is like, if you start becoming swallowed up and all of your friends start disappearing and it just becomes guys from this group, then you might be entering into a cult or treating it like a cult. And that's something that I think is good to stay away from. So that's why I say stay away from commercial public realm 3 offerings. You'll find lots of online gurus and shamans and all these kinds of things. For me, this is the commercialization of spirituality. And basically, the most dangerous ones are the ones who offer you can have everything, all the sex, all the money, all the easiness, the perfect, live in the moment, you'll never have any more problems. Just sign up for my program and then I'll solve it all for you, right? To take my coaching program or something like that. So a lot of the time, these programs will be very feminine. They'll focus on pleasure and ease rather than responsibility and hard work. And often they'll have a very charismatic leader who's always talking in realm 2, but and trying to doing these satsang things or whatever it is. Sorry, I've been doing this stuff myself. I've been one of these people. That's why I can criticize them, I guess, because this is exactly what I was when I started in men's work. Yeah, I would say for a solid men's work facilitator, if he's a contributing part of an established realm 3 tradition, so an established religion, and he's public about that, then you know what his foundation is. If he's a Muslim, this guy's a Muslim. You can go read the Quran and you can see what he believes in. If he's a Christian, he believes in the Bible. He's a part of a tradition. You know who this guy is. And there's something greater than him that's actually guiding his actions, instead of it just coming from inside of him, because, then it's just like, whatever he thinks in the moment, instead of it being established principles that are guiding him as well. So that can be a good thing to look out for if you can handle that kind of thing. For a veteran of men's work, then I think it helps to be at least have had a good year's experience in working specifically with men and being able to see that there's been personal growth. So other people are starting to come to you for advice, inspiration, and support. It doesn't often we think that we're something really great ourselves. Certainly when I started in men's work, I didn't have that foundation at all. But I'm a very entrepreneurial person who's good at starting stuff up. So I managed to get things going and ball rolling and made lots of mistakes before I was able to get where I was today. And that's been painful and difficult. So I don't recommend it. So rather build up the experience in an existing ecosystem, in an existing realm 1 place. And as you start doing that, you should naturally start being able to contribute to, when you see something that's not working, then you say, hey, this thing isn't working. Can I help with that? This could be better. can I do something about that? That's what will naturally happen as you're part and you start contributing positively to a community of people. And that's where you develop your leadership skills. And you will naturally, then you should then start having discussions about values and principles at a higher level. And you could probably even see some things that, you know, your own personal group leader or whatever it is hasn't seen. And so there might be some taboos or elephants in the room that you can address and say like, hey, well, what's actually happening here? And I noticed this and what's happening. And so you can, you know, do independent research and be patient. And then when the time is right, then things will happen naturally. So this is also a time when I think it's good to, you know, I say have a tentative exploration of realm 3. If you haven't ever done that, then you need to start looking about like, well, what are my foundational assumptions about reality and how am I understanding that? And you have to engage with established traditions such as Christianity. If you're living in the West, I think Christianity is kind of unavoidable. This was probably the most important thing I've ever heard in my life. I'd written off Christianity as kind of like, oh, it's just fairy tales and superstition and stuff that I don't need anymore. And when I heard this was Jordan Peterson saying like, you need to at least contend with these ideas. And I started contending with them, and I was like, wow, there's so much here that I can learn. You know, there's millennia of wisdom that's been written down and studied and, you know, worked on by people who are far more intelligent than myself for thousands of years. I don't have the answers right up here in my little experience of life in my head. Then that's when I really started growing a lot as well. So yeah, diving into the underworld of existence, one could say, and be careful. I would warn against using shortcuts such as, you know, drugs and extreme sexual practices are shortcuts into having these kind of transcendent experiences. And I actually think that in the long term, you're going to make your life much more difficult in the long term. So I wouldn't personally recommend that kind of stuff. Yeah, but some other things that we found valuable in these conversations is also looking at your own parents and great parents and great grandparents, exploring what was valuable for them. What did they base their life on? What were the truths that they found helpful? You know, a lot of my journey was really accelerated by having some long walks in the mountains with my dad and talking to him, asking him questions instead of just trying to tell him all of my ideas about life and reality, but trying to understand his ideas about life and reality. And taking it seriously and seeing what I could learn. That was a very, very valuable thing for me. Yeah. Good. Finally, for men's work leaders, then I would say, obviously, you want to be developing as much as possible a realm 1 offering that's very clearly defined as much as possible. You know, I really find actually like, you know, men, just all men, it's a very broad subject. So being able to narrow it down is useful. But you want to keep contact with other peers who are similar to you, and who, especially if you've been walking a path parallel to other men who've been doing, you know, doing men's work, you know, you've been on the same kind of growth trajectory alongside each other, then stay contact with these guys and try and understand how they're working and the decisions that they're making and how those decisions might be different from yours. And especially if you can be keeping each other on their toes, nudging, challenging each other. You know, Hai Pepping is a guy who does this for me, and we have conversations regularly, and it's really, really valuable to just be seeing, hey, where are you in life? And, you know, we've gone very, very almost opposite directions to each other in some ways, but we still listen to each other. And sometimes he says something that really cuts to the bone with something that I'm struggling with. And I hope I can do the same for him as well occasionally. But at the same time, you don't want to get talked up into, you don't have to look for like, you know, everything has to align with these guys, because at the end of the day, different people are going to come to different conclusions. So you want to be deepening and sharpening your own understanding by taking in as much as he says, reflecting on it critically. But, you know, you're going to be developing your own way of doing things, of course. And then I would say you really do want to be thoroughly embedded in a realm 3 tradition and community, which gives you your spiritual foundation. So people know who you are, what you stand for, what it is you're offering. It's not just your own personal preferences, which is very hard to understand a lot of the time, but you're offering something. And also if you start selling realm 3 work, then you kind of start commercializing or even bastardizing your own spiritual tradition. So instead of turning yourself into a guru, then it's better to just be looking to keep these things separate. I really believe that keeping them separate is necessary to keep ourselves honest. And that's not easy to do. And I still have difficulty, you know, finding that dividing line between two things. But what I see is like, if I start doing something that I can see as competing with the church, then I'm trying to not do that. And this is a conversation I'm still trying to learn, because there's a lot of things that people aren't getting from established spiritual communities, especially in the West these days as well. And so people are looking for something else. So not an easy thing. I'm still learning this as well. This is the edge of my position at the moment. Good. Yeah. And then, I mean, obviously, when we found something that's beautiful and valuable and gives us what we need, then we want to share that with other people as well, right? And so, that's the other thing that's difficult. And what I found is to try and, especially in my personal advice when I'm giving coaching to people and something like that, not trying to tell them where to go and what they should be doing, but allowing, they know who I am, they know what I stand for, they know where I come from, and so they can kind of make that out themselves. I noticed, even just, I've had several conversations with you, Richard, and I noticed that when I talk explicitly about Christianity, I know that you have you've had some challenges with looking at that. Then I feel like it actually, it's hurtful and harmful to do that as well, because there's this big risk of I'm talking about some very high, very beautiful principles that are very far away removed from little Paul sitting here and not able to live up to these ideas himself whatsoever. And you judge obviously much more based on your knowledge of me than on the tradition that I follow as well. So yeah, that was it for that presentation. So yeah, any last comments or questions or reflections from you guys before we close off?
Maybe you can elaborate slightly with the idea that a men's work leader should ideally be rooted in some realm 3 traditional spirituality. I'm with you, and I also see the consequent problem that so many of these kind of spiritual gurus, and they tend to be men, they come from a tradition and they also fuck up quite badly. And so it's not the religion's or spirituality tradition's fault, and yet they attach themselves to something and then they kind of get lost in that. So would you also see the value in someone choosing not to be in some kind of realm 3 spiritual religious tradition as well? And just to can be completely independent of that? Does that mean that, because ego it doesn't mean that their ego's going to be safe and okay and they're a good human just because they've got some kind of tradition? We've got enough examples of that. Do you know what I mean?
I'm not sure what you meant, but you said a lot of people choose a tradition and then they somehow mess up in that. Can you just be a bit more explicit what you mean? Sorry.
I didn't say, no, sorry. No. I mean, just because someone has a realm 3 tradition, as you defined it, meaning a religion or a faith or spirituality, doesn't always mean at all that they're a safe bet and that they're not going to get lost in that their ego isn't going to, there's so many unfortunate examples of men. There's always a public example of a man becoming some kind of guru, Instagram shaman, and getting lost in that and then fucking up. So do you see the value in them not also being in that in some way too?
Well, I believe if you don't choose a tradition, you just join the default tradition. And the default tradition. So I don't believe it's possible to not have a cosmology and an anthropology. You have to have some understanding. And so if you don't, our understanding of the world is continually updated by every little point of data and information that we receive through our senses all the time. But obviously we pay more attention to some things than others. And so if I'm intentionally, what a religious tradition is it's a structure and a system whereby you learn to focus your attention on God. And so when you reject that, then you just join what one could call the secular tradition, which is the default tradition in Western society today. And the secular tradition, well, it's really, there's specific forces that are directing our attention, that are forming how we see the world and what it is. It's quite random and chaotic, but I think there are some general tendencies about what are the highest values in our society. Certainly power is one of them, power over people. And it's really, in a negative sense, I would say power to control other people and to direct their attention and to be able to manipulate and exploit them for money and resources and their attention, especially. I think probably attention is taken over from money, at least. So I believe that is, you have to have an incredibly powerful source of defense against that, to not be influenced by joining in that game, to just be fighting for gaining power, attention, and influence. And that game, I believe, is a toxic game. I think it's a dangerous game. I think it's a game that leads actually just to it's the individualist game as well, of course, because it's connected to seeing myself as a separate individual, which is also very dominant in Western society today, and so it leads to fragmentation and disintegration, really. So that's why I believe like these spiritual traditions have always been what you could call it, like a mountain, or a castle. And a set of tools and weapons to protect oneself. That's the purpose of them. It's to engage intentionally in learning to become, to move your spirit to a higher place than just be allowed to just get pushed around by whatever it is that's around you. Does that make sense?
It does. And I still see plenty of people that are committed to a tradition and kind of still fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen plenty of people great examples of men and women that have no tradition that's obvious, belong to this default secular tradition, as you labeled it,
mm-hmm.
and are really fucking good humans and do great work as well. And so I just wanted to kind of challenge the notion that it's a really good sign that someone has taken on a tradition, because that somehow sets them up as morally superior or safer, because there's plenty of evidence to the contrary. So it just feels like a weird indicator. Like, I get where you're coming from, and there's so much evidence to the contrary, unfortunately, as well.
It's really interesting you say that. I mean, so part of the Christian idea is to not judge others. And so we judge people all the time. I judge people all the time, just as we do. But the idea is that we don't know what's in people's hearts. And so someone who seems incredibly successful and seems to have everything in order can often be, almost, in deep pain. And someone who is very, downtrodden and in the gutter can sometimes be incredibly spiritually enlightened. And so it's very easy to follow the signs of success, especially in our days of internet culture, where we look on YouTube and we see, the guys with 3 million followers, and everything he says just clicks into place. For many years, Jordan Peterson was that guy for me. He was like, wow, this guy, he's a university professor, and he's got all this, he's an evolutionary theorist, and he's like all these followers, and he's so strong and clear, and all these kinds of things. And then you see, just like 2 years down the road, like, the guy's almost dead from becoming a drug addict, and is collapsing everything his entire life. His wife almost died almost at the same time from cancer. That was from cancer, right? But I mean, like, it's like, so we don't know the way things are. And so what one of the things of men's work as well is to move our attention. Yeah. So I put my faith in traditions. This is great, Richard. I put my faith in tradition. And I also see that I believe that secular tradition as a whole, there's plenty of amazingly inspiring people who are raised up by secular tradition. Some of those guys, I still use inspiration from them. And I think there's a lot of them that say really smart stuff. I follow like Alex Huberman and these guys, Lex Friedman. These are really, really intelligent guys. But I don't trust their tradition. I don't trust their tradition one little bit. And I see my tradition as a fortress and a weapon against that tradition. And the tradition, I would go so far as to say I see it as demonic. I'd say secular tradition is demonic, and where it's leading our society right now is a very dark place. And so while I my goal is to see Christ in every single human that I meet, but I don't trust the ideology of Western secularism, not at all. I think a lot of men's work is coming from this. Like, a lot of men's work is guys who are seeing the problems in our mainstream society. I think some of it have came from COVID, some of it have come through the trans, whatever. Some of it came from Me Too. Some of it comes from, all kinds of different things happening in society. But increasingly people are starting to see the cracks, like something off here. And so we need to go back and find something more stable that we can stand on. And I think that's why we're, the word radical is actually just means back to the roots. That's the meaning of the word radical. So people are are becoming radicals in some ways, is that we're increasingly looking to go back to roots again.
Thank you. As ever, I think we have different opinions, but I love the fact that we can talk about it respectfully. So appreciate you hearing me and answering me again.
Yeah, I appreciate the same. I think you ask critical questions in an incredibly productive way, Richard, which makes it a pleasure to have Realm 2 type conversations with you. Yeah.
Likewise,
this is what I love about men's work, is like it seems like this is what we get good at, is respectfully disagreeing. Good. Alex, you had a comment. Is it worthwhile expanding on, or should we say that was that for today?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to say that was that.
Okay, great. Well, great conversation, guys. Thank you very much. I really appreciate all of you signing up. I think we'll be continuing to have these once a month now, going into the fall, or the rest of the summer and going into the fall. We'll be doing these once a month, taking up some different conversations. I think we'll be talking about men and leadership next time. So that's going to be an interesting one. We're refreshing how to do that in our 10 principles. So thanks very much. Good seeing you guys, and have a great weekend. Thanks for joining on your Friday evenings. Coming and
thanks,
joining
everyone.
us on a beautiful, sunny, enjoyable Friday summer holiday. Yeah. Good.
Bye-bye.
All right.